Hey guys, B. Maraka here from the Book Rant. Uh, I am a writer and content creator of horror and crime fiction mostly. This channel, you get to see a lot of reviews and everything, this and that. I'm still getting used to it on YouTube, so I thank the subscribers that I have for sticking with me. I also run a website called thebookrant.com. It's a blog, and there's tons of articles on there about awesome books you should check out that I've read. They go from extreme horror to mystery to crime fiction, regular horror. So definitely check those out. There's lots of books on there that teens and kids can read too. So I recommend checking out my blog. It is also where I'll be posting my short story series coming out soon. It's a survivor horror series. I'm also working on a book. So those are things to look forward to. We are here today to talk about the slasher novel that no one is reading. And slasher is a genre you don't really see in literature. Obviously, there are some. Even the great R.L. Stine has gone there and written some in his Fear Street novels, which I really appreciate that he does. R.L. Stine is king. We can all agree on that. This is not an R.L. Stine book, no. This is Santa Took Them by William Malmberg. Did I say that right? Malmborg. If he's watching this movie, I'm sorry. That's just to give you a little taste on how bloody this book is. The back cover is a bloody print. It says, "Evil never dies." Who does that remind you of? Mike Myers. They've said something very similar, if not the same, in his movies. Christmas Eve, 2005. 8-year-old Michelle Harper, like Michael Myers, Michelle, is the only survivor in a horrific massacre that left her 4 siblings decapitated and her mother slowly dying as her innards oozed out from the second-floor landing. The words, "Santa took them," written in blood on the bedroom wall. 10 years later, after having been released from a psychiatric hospital, Michelle disappears. Her uncle, who was her guardian at the time before she disappeared, after she got out of the hospital, is found hacked to death with a knife before being decapitated. The words, "Santa took them," once again written in blood on the wall. Dr. Samantha Loomis had no plans for the holidays and was hoping to spend the time simply relaxing in her home. That all changes when the police begin asking her questions about Michelle. Questions that make it fairly clear that they believe her to be guilty of the recent slayings. No one in Brook Hollow has forgotten the horror that unfolded on Christmas Eve all those years ago. And now, as a terrifying blizzard descends upon the small, isolated town, and the teens begin disappearing one by one, it looks as if that gruesome night was only the beginning. And there's a quote on the first page. "Death has come to your little town, Sheriff," said by Dr. Sam Loomis in Halloween. So this is a scene from the first chapter. The 8-year-old girl was sitting by the tree, facing it in a Santa hat atop her head. Tiny voice reciting, "'Twas the night before Christmas." The porch door shattered. "Ruth!" Martin shouted while coming into the room. "Are you?" He stopped and stared. "Santa?" Ruth twisted toward her son, who had come down the stairs, her hand rubbing his sleepy eyes. "Paul, honey, can you please go back upstairs while Daddy and—" "Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night," Michelle shouted gleefully while twisting towards them, her blood-splattered nightgown clinging to her body as she shifted. A tiny head rolled from her lap, its lifeless eyes staring up at them as it came to rest in the middle of the floor. Some of it is extreme horror, so if you do get squeamish or grossed out, there are parts that may get you like that. This is a slasher novel. You have, a teen or an adult just going about their business in town. They're connected to the case somehow, and then out comes the killer. I don't want to say who the killer is, but I mean, That's not saying the actual Santa is a killer. Santa's real, right? Anyways, Samantha Loomis is like, I don't think it can be Michelle. I mean, I worked with her for 10 years. She was not the violent type, is pretty much her argument that she tells detectives and the sheriff. And they're reluctant to believe her, of course. And she's not very welcomed in the town either when people start to realize who she is. And on top of that, they have a huge blizzard descending upon the town. So it's not like people can be out on the streets investigating this case or something. They're putting their lives at risk. And I think that's an interesting factor in the book, a survival factor. Because you do get at least a couple of these characters, from what I remember, trapped out in the blizzard. And the struggle to survive, how they get trapped out. It wasn't too hard to find out what exactly was going on in the book, the twist or whatever. Die-hard horror fans who really like slashers and mysteries will probably figure out early on. Nonetheless, it's done in such a way that I have to give props to William. He really sold us with this book. I'm glad I bought it. He writes a lot of horror books. Jimmy is his best one, which is actually referenced in this book. So I guess all his novels take place in the same universe. Jimmy and this are all I've read so far. But his plots are very twisty and everything. So for slasher novels, I don't see why. It's because it's an indie book, definitely, is why Hollywood hasn't picked it up and made it into a film. It is not a ripoff of Halloween or Mike Myers. The author obviously wanted to pay some honor forward to them by using names like the characters, but this book is not a ripoff. It is not something you've seen before, despite the mystery not being too hard to figure out. And the mystery, like the overall of what's going on, who's the killer and why, is actually pretty interesting. The reasoning for the killer's motives, when you finally figure it out, it's not clear, but it is ambiguous and tells you a little bit on what's going on. There's blood, there is gore, it gets very detailed at times. The characters are also really likable. I forget some of their names because I read this book over a year ago. There's this sassy teen girl who's like obsessed with her boyfriend, but as you go further in the book, you think she's obnoxious and self-centered at first, but she kind of plays a heroic role later on, and you actually start rooting for her. Michelle was a very sympathetic character. She was someone you cared about, someone who suffered from a lot of anxiety and depression in her current state after years of treatment. So I definitely related to her. I've never been through something she has, but the point is, you can tell she's a victim of trauma. She is very slow with her words. She just wants comfort and to be left alone, to have people be nice to her. Whether or not she's the killer, you can tell she's not right in the head, and for that you feel for her. I really like the doctor Samantha Loomis too. She wasn't like the Dr. Sam Loomis from the Halloween movies. She was more motherly towards Michelle. We got to see like a different story overall, where the doctor cares about their patient. They don't necessarily think they're the killer, but they want to save them. And whether or not Samantha is right or wrong, you'll have to read the book to find out. But those are just a few examples, and some of these other characters in this town aren't saints either. They're all thinking Michelle is a devil, but they do a lot of bad things themselves. So there's a lot to look forward to in this book, and it's not even that long. 298 pages, so 300 pages. And I've spoken with the author before. He said he has planned on sequels for this book. He just hasn't gotten around to it. So I'm hoping we can promote the hell out of this book, and the author will see it. And if he's still into it, because the guy also has to want to do it. I don't want to force him to do anything, but hopefully he'll give us more of this amazing story that he's crafted, because I truly love it. Santa Took Them by William Malbor, guys. Check it out. Thanks for coming to the book rant. I'll see you later.